am going to walk you through the requirements to avail of quarantine-free travel to Singapore via the Vaccinated Travel Lane or VTL for short-term visitors coming from the Philippines. So actually, there's an available checklist at www.safetravel.ica.gov.sg, and I am going to walk you through the items that are listed there. So first, this applies to short-term visitors. So these are mostly people going on vacation, or these are tourists. So this does not apply to Singapore citizens or permanent residents or people who are long-term pass holders. So to start, here are the requirements that you need to prepare before going to Singapore. So number one, if you're from a country that requires a visa traveling to Singapore, you have to secure that. And if you're from the Philippines like I am, you're not required to request for a visa, but what you need to have is a Vaccinated Travel Pass. You can apply for a Vaccinated Travel Pass or VTP through this link that I am flashing on the screen, and you will receive confirmation via email whether your application has been approved or denied. The requirements for the VTP are quite simple. You have to present a valid proof of vaccination in English. From the Philippines, this requires that you have VaxCert from vaccination PH.gov.ph, I think, and this will have a QR code that will enable you to submit your application for a VTP. Also, you will need to specify the address where you will be staying during your visit to Singapore. You will also need to book a flight to Singapore that is a designated VTL flight. So you have to make sure, because not all flights going to Singapore from the Philippines is a VTL flight. So I booked via Philippine Airlines, and I called them beforehand to ensure that the flight I will be in is a VTL flight. So far, when I checked with them, all of their flights going to Singapore are VTL flights for as long as you satisfied all of the requirements, like if you have a VTP and a travel insurance coverage, it's a VTL flight. After that, you will have to make sure that you buy travel insurance that will cover COVID-related incidents and expenses that you will incur during your stay in Singapore should you contract the COVID-19 virus, should you be positive while you are in Singapore. And the travel insurance coverage should amount to at least 30,000 Singapore dollars. Not to worry, if you're booking via Philippine Airlines like I did, there's an option to click travel insurance as an add-on. The coverage that they provide for Asian destinations is 65,000 US dollars, which is way over the requirement of Singapore. You have to make sure that you have an electronic or physical copy of the travel insurance coverage that you've purchased, because they're going to have to check that. Another requirement is for you to monitor your health status, because if you have any COVID-like symptoms like fever, flu, cough, shortness of breath, loss of taste and smell, colds, please defer your travel and consider traveling at a later date when you feel better. If you are also a recovered COVID-19 patient, so if you've contracted the virus and have already recovered, you will need to secure proof of recovery in English from certified health providers. This is something that you need to submit for you to be exempted from the on-arrival testing that is required, which I will discuss later on. And finally, you should have a negative RT-PCR or antigen rapid test that is professionally administered within 2 days before your scheduled flight to Singapore. And this must be administered by an internationally recognized and accredited laboratory, clinic, or medical facility. DOH, or Department of Health, has a list of accredited laboratories. I got mine at PADLab. It's the Philippine Airport Diagnostic Laboratory. It's near the airport and it's operating for 24 hours. I was not allowed to take footage of how it was, but it was very efficient. I was in and out in less than 30 minutes. I took an antigen rapid test and got my results 30 minutes after my swab. This requirement does not apply to children aged 2 and below in this calendar year and all recently recovered travelers. Finally, you'll have to download and install the Trace Together app on your phone. This is required because when you arrive in Singapore, they will monitor every single place you will go to, and they use this app to check whether you are at a certain location. If by chance a COVID-19 case is reported there during the time that you were there, you will be notified, so you need the app. So again, let's review. When you go to the airport for your flight to Singapore, these are the items that you need to submit. Number 1, your Vaccinated Travel Pass, which shows that you've been approved by ICA, the government agency of Singapore, to go inside Singapore. Number 2, your flight should be a VTL flight. You should confirm with your airline. As far as I know, there's also a link that will allow you to check whether the airline that you've selected has VTL flights. But again, outside the Philippine Airlines, please check whether the flight that you were getting is a VTL flight. Number 3, you need travel insurance worth at least 30,000 Singapore dollars covering COVID-related expenses, and you should have an electronic copy or printout of that insurance coverage should they request for it. Number 4, you should have proof of negative RT-PCR testing or ART testing at least 72 hours before your travel time. If you've recently recovered from COVID, you need to provide proof of recovery also from a medical institution. And finally, you should download the Trace Together app to allow the Singapore government to facilitate efficient contact tracing. Oh, by the way, Singapore has removed the paper arrival cards that you need to accomplish once you arrive to Singapore. So there is also a link where you can complete your arrival card online, and do complete this because they will look for this in the Singapore immigration. In the Philippines, you will still have to write on our paper departure cards. So upon arrival to Singapore, of course, you will have to go straight to immigration. There are a lot of officers there who will guide you because you are not allowed to walk anywhere else. Once you go out of the plane, you are not supposed to like go to a store first and get some, I don't know, chocolate. Well, anyway, all of the stores, the duty-free stores that you will pass through on the way to immigration will be closed anyway, probably for this purpose because you're not allowed to go anywhere. You should go straight to immigration where they will conduct their usual immigration checks and check if all of your requirements are complete. And then after going through immigration and after being approved to enter, you are only allowed after immigration to get your check-in baggage, pass through customs for anything that you might need to declare, and then when you go outside of the terminal, there are officers that will ask whether you're going to the place where you will stay via taxi or private car hire, because those are the only options. You're not allowed to take public transportation like buses or trains going to your hotel or home. No one is allowed to pick you up. You're still being isolated at this point. So you can only get a taxi or book a Grab or a Gojek. I think they call it Gojek here. There are other apps, ride-hailing apps in Singapore. Those are your only options. So once you get to your place of stay in Singapore, you have to await an email that instructs you to get your oath. So we have an ART, an antigen rapid test, and now we have an oath. It's an on-arrival test. So you will have to complete on-arrival testing, which is a self-administered antigen rapid test. You will do it yourself. So you will receive an email giving you instructions. This requirement has been updated and made easier. So beginning March 14th, arriving travelers are only required to undergo an unsupervised self-administered antigen rapid test using self-procured authorized ART kits within 24 hours of arrival in Singapore, which means that you can do your test at your place of accommodation. Travelers are required to report their test result via www.sync.gov.sg before proceeding with their activities in Singapore. And if you test negative, congratulations! You can now go out and explore Singapore and try to have a taste of traveling as a tourist during a pandemic. This allows you to travel quarantine-free. Personally, my experience was my flight arrived at 1:15 in the afternoon, and then I went to my place of stay. I arrived by 2 p.m. I booked my ART and swabbed myself in the location at 3:30 p.m. and then by 4 p.m. I already had my results, and 4:30 I was already eating outside and enjoying Singapore. So I do hope that you also have the same smooth experience and that you enjoy quarantine-free travel to Singapore. Some of my tips when traveling to Singapore include: number 1, I'm not sure when you're watching this, but early March, it's quite difficult to get Singapore dollars from the Philippines, so do call your banks. Have a travel advisory so they will authorize your debit cards to have transactions online if you have Visa or MasterCard debit cards, which I did. And also for you to be able to withdraw from your ATMs in Singapore. Be vigilant about using the Trace Together app because that helps the government trace where you've been. Unfortunately, that app requires your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to be open. If you don't have Wi-Fi, I think it's best to get a pocket Wi-Fi service probably. Most, if not all, of the establishments I've been to so far, like malls, will have their free Wi-Fi, so that helps, but I'm not sure whether all of the locations you're planning to visit will have that, so better be safe than sorry. Else you can activate your roaming, even if it might be quite expensive if you do so you can check in. So I hope this has been helpful, and if you're interested to see how my Singapore adventure goes, please follow me and subscribe because I am planning to go to many activities that are not your usual Singapore. Of course, I will still be staying in the city, but I am really pursuing some nature activities where I will see a lot of plant life and animal life, and also of course I will eat a lot of food. So if you like that, I am looking forward to see you in my next videos. The Wandering Wanderer left footprints in Singapore. You will also need to book a flight to Singapore that is a